Okay, so we are good to go here. I'm just Xing out of a couple things. Okay, so hi and welcome to the Local Lou podcast, where we explore local history through historical markers. We recently got to know R.F. Pettigrew through his historical marker. And, I think the more I think about it, that he would just love the fact that he has a larger than life statue of himself on a pedestal. I feel like that is this guy. And it is 100% up his alley. So he would be very happy that is how Sioux Falls is choosing to remember him. Now, that being said, little did I know that Pettigrew would be the bridge to Huntsville, Alabama that I have been looking for. So I want to introduce a guest today. SueAnne Griffith is the creator and host of Lily Flagg Signal, a podcast dedicated to the rich history of Huntsville, Alabama. And, she has just this crazy great passion for uncovering new aspects of her city's history, especially the people and the stories, these overlooked pieces of history. And I think that's probably what launched this show, but, she's going to have to tell us herself. The goal is to share these valuable narratives of all of these interesting people that built our cities, whether you are new to Huntsville, whether you're going there, whether have no plans of going there. SueAnne is going to tell us its history. You can also find her on WAFF 48 News in Huntsville, where she gets to talk about history while showing off her super nifty threads. Honestly, her outfits are a pure delight. So let's see. She loves history. She has fun clothes and a great podcast. I think I'm going to like it here. So welcome, SueAnne.
Thank you. No, that was a great intro. Thank you. And I'm wearing like homemade dress, homemade in a good way, not like, out of like curtains, though I have done that.
There's no bad homemade here. Yeah.
Fair. Yeah. But no, thank you for having me. I'm glad we found a like city connection, because I am from Huntsville. I realize if anyone is listening from Sioux Falls, I don't have the accent. I'm so sorry. The Alabama accent. That's actually kind of common in Huntsville specifically for reasons I can get into. The city of transplants, and kind of always has been. But it's exciting when I find connections to other places, which when I'm traveling, I usually try to find something. I was in Sioux Falls one time for 3 days, way before I had a podcast. So I'm like vaguely aware of the landmarks when you talk about them. Obviously the falls, but like the Pettigrew house I have been in, which is exciting because then now he's got a Huntsville tie-in as well. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. And I gotta say, I am a little nervous because you are, I don't know, I feel like I am just a girl that likes history and like I research it and kind of just cobble it all together myself. And you have this amazing educational background and you are very smart and very organized. And so I'm a little scared, but we're going to make it through, guys. I believe.
The organization, it's very much a fake it till you make it. Like the internet sees the organized parts. The internet did not see before we started recording the cats walking across the keyboard. So it's very strategic. And I realized, because I have a grandfather clock in this room and you can silence it. Did I think of that? No. So you might hear clocks in the background. So it's
all good.
I can just edit it out.
I don't think I've ever had a guest cat on before, so this is exciting.
Oh yeah, Bravo is here, and then Delta. There's a theme with the names. Anyone who's listening is
I'm guessing it is.
It's the alphabet.
Should we do some Morse code with the?
I at one point could. I've forgotten a lot of it, but I could at one point in my life. Because so my background. It was engineering and. Did engineering professor stuff for a while. I never actually had a history job. I just kind of do this. I've decided I'm trying to go back to school because I work at a university, so I get free classes. So I'm like slowly. This is actually finals week, which is like fine. Speaking of being prepared, I have a final due tomorrow. I have not started. I will probably start it tomorrow, which has been the plan. Because in my head I'm like, oh, this is fine. I've done college before. This is fine.
It's fine.
I think the low stakes of like, I already have a job, so I'm like, oh, no,
right.
It's fine. Am I going to stress over it? Probably, but not until it's due at 11:59 at night. So around 9:30 to 10ish, I'll start stressing tomorrow night.
We have so much more in common than I thought.
Oh yeah, no,
this is great.
Oh yeah. No.
Well, I want to kind of start with talking a little bit about what kind of first brought us to like get to know each other a little bit, because I mean, Instagram is a beautiful world. Like, I don't know like, I don't know what brought you to Instagram, but for me, it was the podcast. I actually had no social media. Didn't have Facebook or anything like that. And a friend of mine was like, I get why you don't want to have Facebook anymore, but have you heard of Instagram? And I'm just like, I have, but I'm not interested. And she's like, it's pretty pictures. It's these little heart emojis. It's like, she's like, it's not what you think. And so I'm just like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And so that has been my primary go-to for social media for my podcast, but then in general. And then from that, I've actually met people in real life, and like it's fascinating, like this connection. But for us specifically, I want to give a shout out for 100 Proof History, which is another history podcast, a very irreverent, funny, silly podcast that revolves around whiskey, and I like to think that's kind of what linked us together. And I think it probably says a little bit about our sense of humor if we find Chris and Greg funny, which, cheers to them.
I know. I was like, I hope they hear this.
I really do too. And I don't know how long we would have existed in these similar hemispheres without them linking us together. But would you say that that's probably the first link?
I think so. One of those, it never occurred to me, like I started the Instagram for the show mostly just to tell people, hey, here's a cool old picture, you should look up a podcast. And it never occurred to me to like look for other history podcasts until they said kind of through them, and then found a few other cities. I say I've learned so much about Sioux Falls, despite, like I said, I've only been there for all of 3 days in my life. But I was still just like, oh yeah, no, this is interesting because it's another town that's like, same with like Huntsville. Like I'm genuinely curious, and I might put this out as a poll. Like, how many people listening from Sioux Falls could find Huntsville in general, like on a map? Like, which is it, North or South Alabama, even? Because it's like we're just this town that we exist, we do things, but I think outside of Huntsville, like a lot of people don't really think about Huntsville. And so I was like, oh, other people are doing like their hometowns, and it's like it's important to the people that live there, but it's like I wouldn't expect somebody randomly in like upstate New York to be like, oh man, I've always wondered about North Alabama.
Yeah.
Like, that's maybe they do. Hello to the one person who may be doing that. I don't know.
Well, don't you have listeners outside the United States? I always find that fascinating.
Yes, I have a few. I know I've at least Ryan in Nottingham. I was like, I know at least one person.
Yep.
That listens and like actually interacts. There are Spotify, like with the stats it gives you, every now and then some other countries pop up too. And I'm like, who in France clicked on this by accident?
Someone.
Yeah, it's like they accidentally found it, and I guess they listened to the whole thing, and they probably never came back, but they were briefly, like, I got that little map colored in now. So just checking them off.
So I actually wrote like a little bit of a list of some crossover topics because I went back and listened to some of your older episodes.
Oh no.
And one crossover topic that kind of popped out, because I think that Huntsville and Sioux Falls do have a lot in common. And you've said that tons of times before, that we have just kind of these, I don't know, like connecting fault lines or something.
There's the random little bits.
Definitely. And so one thing is streetcars. Sioux Falls had our first public transit was horse-drawn streetcars. And I thought that was interesting that you guys had, well, I guess from the episode I listened to, I was going to say how many miles of track, but it
was like 5 or 6. Yeah.
It's kind of up for debate.
And it's the map for it. Yeah, I want to say it was about 5. But then we also had this other spur that went up the mountain. So if you're counting that one, that's so yeah, but that was at a different time. But ours were electric, like the electric ones. It was 5 miles because of the mills, which I've heard you mention mills a lot too. So like I said, another tie-in. Ours are
definitely
like cotton linen mills, like they were making fabric, but same idea.
I actually had kind of a funny thing to say about the mills. So the millwork episode, it's the second episode, is the first time that I hear you mention South Dakota on your podcast.
Yes.
And that is actually specifically about a guy we'll touch on today, Wells, and a land company and all that. And a side note that I kind of thought of when I saw that or listened to that episode was, you're talking about child labor and these awful conditions and all those things. And then I think about, podcasting is good and honest work, but it doesn't pay. And I wonder if we were to take all the hours that we have worked on our podcast and then all the dollars that we have made and like divide that, like, do you think we're making as much as a child in a mill in the 1800s?
Oh gosh, I could dream of making that much. It's like, I'm afraid to do the math now. Yeah. Because I'm trying to think, do we count every now and then someone recognizes me and like buys me a tea or something at a coffee shop? So we're counting that in.
Definitely count that. Yes.
That's an extra like $15 there for sure. It's happened like 3 times.
That's fantastic.
It's a thing. No,
but yeah, so that was kind of a silly thing they thought of. Okay, so one more overlapping thing is we both have, by we, I mean our cities, Sioux Falls and then Huntsville, have Jesse James lore.
Yes.
Which is interesting because we also have actual James history as well.
As I said, with ours, it's not even Jesse. We got his brother,
it's
who
Frank.
It's Frank, who I actually I knew it was his brother for the longest time until I read the episode. I could never remember his name. It was like, oh, it's the other one.
Funny.
Which is like, I felt bad. I mean, okay, I don't feel bad for either of them, but like I felt bad. Like, oh, it's the other kid. You know, it's like, oh, he doesn't even get a name. I feel bad. It's like when you know your friend's name, but your friend's partner that they've had for long enough that you can't ask their name, but like you also don't remember it. Yeah, I felt like that about it. It's like, oh, it's
like you. Look at you.
That guy.
Love seeing you. So glad you're here.
Yeah, we were wondering if you would be able to
make it.
It's like that, but it's Frank James.
Yeah. Yeah, which
who
is
I will
fine.
now never forget. But
right. But I also kind of agree with like, you know, I don't know. We were talking earlier about women not having names in history. I think it's okay to forget a guy's name from time to time.
No. That's why I was like, I don't feel too bad.
Yeah, it's fine. And he was a bank robber. Like, and he also got to live his entire life. Like, it wasn't like his brother Jesse, who, you know, he did get cut down in such a way that it added to his legend and lore, and it also added to the thing where it's like you kind of feel a little bad for him. I mean, like
I was like, yeah, Elton John did not write a song about Frank James dying.
It's true.
Which I didn't realize until working on the episode either that he has the song that kind of references Jesse James' death.
Yeah, about the bullet in the gun.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's who that's about, because I didn't know that guy's name either. It's like, oh, it's you.
No.
Though I will say, in fairness, the Frank James trial in Huntsville, they found him not guilty, so technically he did not rob a payroll here, supposedly. They didn't find anyone else to blame, but technically, legally, he did not rob a payroll.
Which matters. That matters. Yeah. And I heard that he thought the jail was lovely.
He was very unbothered by the whole thing, so love that for him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do the crime or not, like, he was prepared to do the time, so that's good. And then that, you know, I kind of found that we have RF Pettigrew, and you guys have this guy, his last name's Pratt, and you talk about how he was called, I think it was in a newspaper article, that he was downright hustling.
Yes.
And a real mover and shaker, right?
Yes. Referring to people and the town as hustling, or sometimes hustlin', was like a thing for a sec down here. I found a few ads that were like, visit Hustlin' Huntsville. I'm like, that doesn't mean what it means now.
But I love it.
Yeah. So
I love it.
Yeah, Pratt was downright hustling. Written by an absolutely unhinged newspaper guy. I should add, the guy that ran the newspaper was unhinged. We also had, because Pettigrew has his really cool house that's now a museum and filled with a bunch of stuff that he collected, and we have a dude that did that too. He built, the house is shaped like an X, and he stuffed the walls with hay because he was like, oh, I don't want to, like insulation. I have my own ideas. And then the house burned down because the walls were stuffed with hay. And he immediately just like built it again, fireproofed the hay, but otherwise just did this almost the exact same house over again. And now it's a museum. So we have our weird, it's Dr. Burritt. And so, yeah, we have our weird house museum guy. And it's a
How
really
does
nice
one fireproof hay? A
bunch of chemicals. Things that I don't think you could legally buy now.
No.
I couldn't find the exact recipe that he used, but I was like, nothing about this sound like it sounds like stuff you'd build a bomb out of, probably.
Yeah, it's totally illegal. Yeah.
Like, yeah, we probably can't buy that out. But that was the approach. And then he was like, yep, here's my X-shaped house on top of a mountain.
Okay.
Good for you, bud.
Yeah. And he left that to the city, or they wanted it? Okay.
He left it in his will. He had no descendants, so he was just like, we can just give this to the city and make it into a museum. And he was required at least half of the board to be women in garden clubs so they could like maintain the grounds, which was like
Oh,
weirdly
that's kinda
sexist, but kind of
cute.
good forethought. Like
Yeah.
he was coming from a good
Yeah.
place. He's like, get those
Yeah.
women some volunteer positions, get that unpaid labor. Yeah, that was my first thought when I read it. He meant well, but he tried.
That's fascinating.
So yeah. Did Pettigrew's? I forget how did it end up a museum? Did he meant to do it, right?
Yeah,
Like
he left it to the city because I don't think we would have made it a museum without that. So
Okay. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, and I was like, there's no way it's that similar. So I was like, I must be imagining this. But no, you did. Okay.
Yep.
No, it's the same.
Yep. It's totally the same. So, there are a couple things about Huntsville history that is just way different than Sioux Falls history. First of all, you guys are known for a lot of space, the space race. You guys were involved with that.
Yes. I mentioned it being like city of transplants.
Yeah.
I mean, I always, when I do my little talks, like going way back, because like the indigenous groups were here, and then like settlers, so transplants, and then the mills, which Pratt and the South Dakota tie-in with getting a lot of the mills. We had a bunch of people move here for jobs, a lot of transplants, but then it happened again with the space race. So in 1950, the U.S. government had a lot of they phrase it as former German rockets. The guys that built the V-2 missiles for the Nazis is who they were. They had a bunch of them. They brought them in, and they kept them out in the desert for a sec, kind of so they could work on stuff and keep them observed, but also like people kind of got less, like they couldn't immediately be like, hey, guess who we got? It's your old foes, the Germans. So they waited
you need to put a little time there. A little time.
Yeah, they were like, okay, it's been 5 years, 1950. We're going to move them to Huntsville and then have it here, because we had an arsenal already where they were doing like chemical warfare and building like smoke grenades. And then that had kind of closed down because there was no war. And they're like, oh, we have all this land, so let's just like plop all of the Germans out there. And then a bunch of people moved here like to work on that. And so the town at least doubled in size in 10 years. Which there's like a lot of 50s and 60s neighborhoods because of that, because there's like, they ran out of housing. I got to talk to a lady recently. She moved here in, I think she said 57, for her husband to work on the arsenal. And she was like, yeah, they put us in literally, it was like a cinder block apartment because that was all they had.
Wow.
Like, wow, I would have simply not taken that job, but okay. Like, hey, come move across the country to this place that's very hot, that your house may or may not have air conditioning, and you're just going to live in this cinder block thing. But I mean, it worked out fine for her. But that was like, there were just so many people coming in. And the rockets that took people to the moon, and all of them before that, there was the Mercury and then Gemini and then Apollo programs. All of the rockets designed for that, they did the design here in Huntsville.
Wow.
Which is kind of fun, because like Houston, you think of like that's the control, and then they launched them from Florida. But like the engineering design stuff, a lot of that was here. And it's still not most people are engineers. I would say maybe like a third of the town, just ballparking it, is engineers or like works with either NASA or some kind of defense contract, like to this day. Because that's just like our thing. I work for a university, so I'm kind of outlier, but I'm an engineer, so like still kind of in that.
Yeah, you still have your finger in the pie, just in the different. Yeah.
It's like I vaguely sometimes know what they're talking about. I don't know propulsion, like rocketry stuff, but like the circuits, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I know what those words mean. I know that part, but I don't build the rockets or anything. But we all know, like everybody knows a rocket scientist. Like that's normal here.
That's so funny.
So that's our industry.
That's great. So welcome to Huntsville. It is rocket science. It is.
Oh, and they play it up everywhere. We have like little rockets and missiles like on some of the street corners, like as displays. I mean, because the Rocket City, which all of that was a big rebrand in the 50s, because they were like, oh, we got to seem modern. And so we have like our courthouse was built in the mid 60s and is very mid-century brutalist. A lot of people hate it. I like it. They did a lot of stuff like that where they're like, we got to seem modern. And then to this day, it's like Huntsville, the star of Alabama, and we have like a little star on the logo. Like they lean into it. The amphitheater is the Orion, because it's a constellation. Like everything.
Fascinating. And it's always good when you give yourself your own nickname. Like
yeah, that's I thinking of it that way. Yeah, they're like, what do we want to be called? Let's just go with that.
Yeah,
it was a rebrand.
Yeah,
for sure.
Good for them. I am kind of sad you guys didn't get that like kind of Disneyland space situation. Like what was it supposed to be, like a theme park, like
It was gonna
Dollywood, but
be
for rockets?
yeah, like Rocket Dollywood or Rocket. They compared it at the time to Disney World and Disneyland.
Okay, like that Tomorrowland, or I don't
They
know.
wanted a dinosaur section. They wanted, because it's the South, they wanted like an antebellum section where they just
That
like
part was riveting.
yeah.
When you were talking about that, it's like, do we need to do that? That
No, we don't
sounds
need that.
fascinating.
And
Like, feels too soon.
there's yeah, especially with the like their rebrand 1955, they were like, oh, Huntsville's 150. You know, we're gonna have this whole the sesquicentennial, which is the only reason I can remember what sesquicentennial
Yeah.
means. But that one, they were like, oh, this is we're the Rocket City. But a bunch of the events were like Confederacy themed because that was the thing that they had otherwise been known for. We didn't have a battle
Sure.
here, but they were just like, oh yeah, big hoop skirts. Everything was totally fine, wink wink, because it was run by a bunch of rich old white people.
Right.
And so like that the theme park kind of did that same thing where they're like, oh yeah, look at how cute our like steamboat is, and look at the columns on these mansions. Like that was kind of the approach they were taking with it, because
Yes,
it was the 50s and
architecturally
60s.
interesting, but racist.
Yeah, there's a
That's
lot of
interesting. Well, and I think that's another just such a huge difference between our history, because in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, we never had slavery. And so like that's like a whole huge part of your history and just these connections. Also, we had tons of Civil War veterans come here, but like it's different. It's so different.
Yeah. And it's weird, like the cultural differences within the U.S. from like even that time period and now like talking about the histories, because like you guys had other stuff going on in the 1860s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, which always throws me whenever you say the dates for things. Like when you're talking about like Fort Dakota, in my head I was like, oh yeah, oh I know why there would have been a fort. Wait, nope, that is actually not at all related.
I know, it's
to the Civil War.
fascinating. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. All of it all connects. It just connects so differently. But one thing we have to talk about first is, so, my podcast is called Local Lou, and that's just, I like alliteration, and I have a nickname. My name's Lori, and when I was a kid, people call me Lori Lou, and I still have a sibling and a coworker that call me that to this day. And so it was just, honestly, when I started my podcast, I didn't want to use my real name ever.
Same.
That didn't work out for either of us.
Yeah.
So, like, I really wanted anonymity. And it's like, once you're, like, on the news, it's like, well, there that went. Bye.
Yeah.
And I think, but anyway, so your podcast is called Lily Flagg's Signal. So I kind of would love a little bit of background on what your name means.
So I also didn't want my name associated with it at first, because I was like, what if everybody hates it? Or like at least no one's going to call me by my real name if they hate this. And I didn't, for the Instagram part of it, because I was just putting like the old photos, my face never showed up. So unless somebody like could actually recognize my voice and knew me that well, like it wasn't obviously me. And so I named it after a cow. So Lily Flagg was a cow. So the full name Signals Lily Flagg, which is, I was able to put the signals on the end. The first mention I could find internationally of Huntsville, and there may be earlier ones, it was the first like easy to find one, was in reference to this cow. And I was like, oh, our famous bovine. She and it's one of the stories people get, I don't say get wrong, but it's like it's been twisted around enough, and I've kind of figured out who in the 90s wrote an article and got it wrong that we've now been referencing for years. But what actually happened is the cow set the butterfat production record in 1892. Idea. And it's one of those, like, if you ask me nowadays, like I guess that's still a thing we track.
That's
but
fascinating.
They cared back then. And so she set the record. She was in Huntsville. And they were like, okay, cool. We're going to throw some parties, plural, in this cow's honor. And from what I can find, the cow wasn't at the parties. Like, they had multiple, like, society writers covering this party, wrote, like, paragraphs about, like, the band and the food, and everybody was dressed so nice, and they never mentioned the cow. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure, like, if the cow was there, you would have brought that up.
Yeah.
I would have brought that up.
Yeah.
Because they, like, it was like, if you're talking about the decorations and, like, the dance floor, you would mention a giant cow in the middle of the yard. Like, that would be mentioned. So they, and they sent her up to the World's Fair, and she was disqualified from one of the competitions because she was too good at butter. Like, they had a rule, like, yeah, we're not going to count hers for this, because, like, it wouldn't be fair. She's too good.
Oh, it's too good. It's too good.
And then they ended up not, like in trying to like get more milk, they didn't milk her, and she got kind of an infection. But then they ended up selling her, so she didn't win at the World's Fair. She was disqualified from some of it, and then some of it she just didn't win. And they sold her to somebody in New England, and she went off to Massachusetts and never came back. I assume had a nice little cow life. Like, she was a milk cow and not like a steak cow,
Right,
so I assume she just
right.
kind of was just vibing on the dairy farm in Massachusetts. Or like, I don't know if cows retire. I guess that's when they eat them. I have no idea. It's like, I almost don't want to think about it. I'm like, somebody ate the cow that I named my podcast after.
Yeah.
It's like, I hope not.
Yeah.
But the story that also gets told is like, oh yeah, in 1892 she won the World's Fair and that's why she's famous. I'm like, first of all, there wasn't a World's Fair in 1892, and secondly, like, that's not. But there was a guy in the 1930s that published like history, I'm doing quotes around history articles, where he would just say things.
Sure. Yeah.
And he mentioned like, oh yeah, let me tell you about this cow. And so she got like famous again like 35 years later because of that. But like the story was kind of wrong. So I was like, oh, perfect. I have a thing to name my show after, and I have a thing to cover on like an early episode, because I want to rant about this cow for 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it's also like your art too is a poorly photoshopped, an intentionally poorly photoshopped photo of Lily.
Yes, and that's the reason it looks so pixelated. So that was a drawing of her in a Sydney, Australia newspaper, because internationally famous. But I had, and I still don't have actual Photoshop. I used PowerPoint, and you can do a make this color transparent so that you can put a background. And I did that to the photo. So that's why you've got like the little pixels. It just pulled out that one shade of white. And I just like, I left it because I was like, I either can put 3 hours into this and it'll look okay, or I can put 3 minutes into it and it's going to look, man, it's like 90% of the effort in 10 minutes or that kind of thing. So I was like, yeah, we're just gonna leave it. And once I had it, I was like, I'm not changing it. So every episode has that like ugly photoshopped cow.
I love it.
And it's too late now. I'm like, this is just the thing.
Yeah, it just is what it is. We love it. We love Lily. Yeah.
She's doing her best. We're all doing our best.
I don't know. The other day I said something about doing my best, and then I stopped. I'm like, well, I don't know about like my best, like, but I'm trying, you know?
I'm doing
like,
an amount.
Yeah, and that's going to be good for now.
Somebody was like, if you do your best every day, it's not your best, it's your normal. And I was like, thank you for that excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that is why I'm calling it in tomorrow. Like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum.
It's got to even out. It's fine.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we both have these really niche history podcasts. And I found out that we're 500 miles away from each other, which then makes me want to sing that song about, walking 500 miles. But
I know people can't see. I'm doing the little dance.
Right. I'll keep it on the inside. So can you tell me a little bit about, or tell me what you want about Huntsville history? Just kind of like a Cliff's Notes of Huntsville history. It's up to you how Cliff Notey you want to be about it. Because your history starts way earlier than Sioux Falls. So you guys are like the eight incorporated in 1811 or something?
Yeah. So we had originally Cherokee, Chickasaw, Muskogee Creek people were here. And then not the first person in the county, but the first person to come down, white settler from New England-y, and he kind of came down through, I think it was Georgia, Tennessee-ish, just like kind of cut across there, as one does. The first person to come into like what's now downtown was John Hunt and set up a cabin. And so, because dudes were petty back then, the land came up for sale because, U.S. government treaties, and then not following the treaties, and they said, the SARS now, we're going to sell it. Dude named Leroy Pope came in and was like, oh, I'm gonna actually buy all the land downtown is on. John Hunt is get onwards with yourself. This is my city now. And there's some back and forth about the name because he wanted to call it Twickenham to remind everybody that I'm related to Alexander Pope, the poet from Twickenham, England. And like nobody cared. It ended up a very like rich versus poor thing. And eventually the poor people won because that's, say the actual incorporation. It was originally Twickenham. And then like I think it was 2 years later, they said, nope, it's Huntsville. And it's stayed that ever since. But it's where Alabama became a state here. Like they signed the first state constitution. It's like a block and a half off the courthouse square, or I guess a block depending on how you walk, off the courthouse square. So that was here. So it's like we have all these like little tiny like local claims to fame like that. We're like, this is cool if you care, but like I said, it's really niche. If I walked up to somebody from like Oregon, they'd be like, okay, like whatever. But it's if you're from here, it's cool. So it's like we became a state here. And I feel like there's a lot of like local history. And you probably don't know about that, where it's like, no, if you're from the area, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nobody knows what you're talking about. It's like, I think it's cool. And I think if you're visiting somewhere, it's cool. But yeah, just like as an outsider. But we had that. And then there actually wasn't a Civil War battle here. So we are unique in that when they voted on seceding, and I like to specify seceding and succeeding were not the same thing.
Yes.
Is my catchphrase on that. But the county sent 2 people, and one of them voted, no, I don't want to secede. And the other one said, I'm voting yes. And then immediately like publicized, he's like, I voted yes because I knew it didn't matter because I was outnumbered, but I think this is dumb. Like, I want to go on record and say I don't want to do this. Not to say that everybody here was like perfect and abolitionists and didn't want, but like we had a strong enough representative group here that's how the guys voted. And we had like Andrew Jackson visited here. I mean, it's sort of been before the war, but like Andrew Jackson visited here a lot. And then we had like after the war, there was no battle here because they ended up coming in, and the U.S. Army was a few miles outside of town, and the Confederates were like, oh no, we got to call in backups, telegraph for backup. And the people that ran the telegraph office were like, sure, we'll absolutely do that, wink, wink, and proceeded to not, because they were from Pennsylvania, and they were not all about this. So the next morning,
awesome.
like, the U.S. troops just like rolled in with like minimal opposition and just took over the town, essentially just like early morning. So like people woke up and they're like, oh, that's a different flag. Okay. I mean, like some people were super stressed about it, but like,
sure,
there wasn't any kind of battle. Like if every now and then people would like yell at somebody or like occasional stray shots out like outside of town, but it wasn't like, middle of town burning down houses, fighting. So we actually have, I think it's second to Savannah. I don't know if Charleston has more, but like really high. We're in the top 5 like concentrations of antebellum houses in the South because nobody like burned them.
Oh, that makes sense. So, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Because it's like we came out, I don't want to say unscathed, but like a church burned down by accident because they didn't have anywhere to put the troops. So they were staying in the church and they like lit a fire for warmth and accidentally burned it down. But nobody was like, we're going to, show them who's boss, tear it down. Like that never happened here. It happened in other places.
Yeah,
so
no, it happened.
It absolutely happened. Yeah,
it happened.
Just our downtown, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then, going forward from that, we had weirdly, so Alabama, we had so many state constitutions like back to back because they had the one where we seceded, the one where we unseceded, and then that one wasn't good enough, so we had to have another one to actually get admitted back into the Union like a few years after the war ended because Congress was like, you tried, but like do better. Those ones weren't written in Huntsville, but they actually did like through Reconstruction. We actually had a lot of Black businesses, including the oldest or longest running, at least in the state, Black run newspaper. Started here in the 1870s for a few decades. And Alabama A&M here in town was started by a formerly enslaved guy who actually as a kid had been auctioned off at the place Andrew Jackson used to go for like gambling, because it was like a horse racing gambling place, but they also auctioned enslaved people. And he started a school, and then when he got enough like grant funding, he actually set up the school at the same site, and then the fancy like gambling hotel place became the president's mansion that he got to live in.
Oh, that's amazing.
Like a full circle thing there. So we had a lot of like, they said like smaller stories where it's like you hear and you're like, wow, that place has a lot of history, but it's important like locally. And we had a lot of mills. So 1890 is when our friends from South Dakota rolled in. And they were like, hey, we have money, we have connections, we're going to put all these mills here because why are we growing the cotton here and then shipping it up? Why don't we just put the mills like by the farms? Which makes sense. It was when I was like, oh, somebody should have thought of that sooner, but they're the ones that thought of it, so they're the ones that made the money off of it. And they built this whole subdivision. I'm pointing because it's like maybe like a few blocks from me. I'm like, oh yeah, they built this subdivision right over there for the mill workers and just really changed the town. They're the ones that did a lot of the funding for the trolleys. They actually got money from DuPont, like the DuPont chemical company. That guy just gave us, I was like, why did you know that guy? Like, I don't know how they met, but he sent some money down. So they like kind of modernized the city the first time. And then, space race, that was our next like big jump, like 50 or so years later. And then it's really, the population has only ever gone down by like 1% in the 90s, like census to census. Other than that, it's always just been growing. A year or two ago, I think they said we got like 25 new people a day for a little while there, which is absurd. Like the traffic, I'm like, bring back the trolleys. because the traffic. It's like we literally were not built for this. Because they keep sprawling. We are 7 square miles smaller than Chicago because of the sprawl. It's not nearly as dense. There's a few buses. So it's like when you say Chicago, it's like we are not sure. We're the biggest city in Alabama, but that's not Chicago.
Well, we're the biggest city in
size-wise.
South Dakota, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's the biggest city in South Dakota, right? Yeah,
It's like you gotta add that qualifier, but it's still.
Yeah.
I mean, comparatively,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to look up what the population is because I
believe
know this,
we have
and I
similar populations because ours is hovering around 200,000, I think, and I think you guys are probably the same,
That's
give or take.
I don't. So we just annexed some more stuff like within the past month. So I'm like, I don't know how much of that was like empty. Yeah, we're 230 like within city limits.
Yeah.
Okay. Because and then Madison. So Madison is like not Huntsville, and people get like very like, oh, it's different, but it's surrounded by Huntsville at this point. Like we've kind of enclosed it, and they've got another like 70 or so thousand, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
So they're in the county, but not our city limits. It's literally like blobbed around Madison, so they can't expand the city anymore because it's Huntsville everywhere you go. And I remember like when I was a kid, that was farmland. Like there was a town there, but it was mostly farmland, and now it's subdivisions.
Yeah, we have Harrisburg and T and all these places that like when I was a kid for sure were just farms and a couple of houses here and there, and now they're little cities or big towns, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
That's how ours is. And sometimes I'll be like, if I'm with somebody that didn't grow up here, I'll be like, I remember when that was a field full of horses, and now it's like, a bunch of shopping things and some houses. I'm like, but trust me, it used to be horses.
That's how old we are now.
I know, yeah.
We are officially the age where it's like, I remember when that was a barn.
I had that realization too. I was like, I sound like my parents. Because I remember when I was little, they'd be like, oh yeah, I remember when we moved here, this was just like a 2-lane little road. And it's like, now that's me. Like,
totally. Oh. No, totally. I'm there with you. So I think it was, it doesn't matter when it was, but at some point in the recent past, I was just kind of bopping around on the internet and I found Changing Huntsville 1890-99 by Elizabeth Humes Chapman. And I'm going to pull up like a little excerpt from the book here. And it says, another transaction of the North Alabama Improvement Company was the sale of the Huntsville Hotel block, including a 5-story brick building, red sandstone structure, the Opera House, Monte Sano, maybe I'm saying it wrong.
Oh, there's so much drama around that.
Oh, good. Railway and Turnpike Drive with 1,800 acres of land in the suburbs of Huntsville to a group of capitalists who formed themselves into a company with the following officers: U.S. Wells, President; T.W. Pratt, Vice President; U.I. Wellman, Secretary; James A. Ward, Treasurer. All of them from Pierre, South Dakota. The directors, also including the officers, were James F. O'Shaughnessy of New York, P.C. Fisk of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and R.F. Pettigrew of Sioux Falls, North Dakota. 3 Huntsvillians were also on the board, but they will be mentioned later. First of all, Sioux Falls is in South Dakota, not North Dakota, but that's cool. I get it. Well,
that's in fairness or revenge. So O'Shaughnessy is... he was here, like, actually the guy that started International Harvester, like that family, the McCormicks, like his daughter, or I guess there was Big Daddy McCormick, and then his son McCormick, and then his daughter. So it was like multi-generational thing, but she lived in one of the O'Shaughnessy's. There were brothers. One of them lived near the mills, like, so we could see what was going on, and she lived in his house. But they have a road named O'Shaughnessy, and we call it O'Shagnasty sometimes. So revenge for them not knowing North and South Dakota. With the difference.
I love that. That's interesting. We have an International Harvester warehouse in Sioux Falls, so an old one that still stands, which is cool, in our warehouse district. Yeah.
I remember you had a photo of like the sign for that once. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, that's another tie-in, and I forgot to mention it earlier. Because we have the house that she had was still here. And then there's a bar called Shagnasty's. Like, it's literally spelled Shagnasty's.
That's
I have never been inside, but it does exist. And then there's a road. It's actually, the road is in 5 Points, the neighborhood that they started, which it's called 5 Points because obviously there's a road with like 5 roads, or an intersection with 5 roads.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That makes sense.
And one of those roads is named after Pratt, of course.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
the reason that it did that is the city's built like on a grid based on there's a spring that like was our water supply, and upstream
Oh,
of
yeah.
that is still our water supply, but the
Really?
grid was built on that. And so these guys came in from out of town and they were like, all right, we're going to do what makes sense and make the roads go like north, south, and east, west. But that didn't line up with the grid. So that's why we have the little 5 points. But now their neighborhood is 5 points because it did that. But they did the more sensical option of making it actually line up with our streets. Like you'll say go north on this road, but it's not actually north. It's like kind of sideways. Those guys from South Dakota, like they knew their north and their south. Like they made the roads make sense. So shout out to them for knowing how to use a
Yeah.
compass.
Well, it is actually kind of a big thing around here. People don't say left or right. They say go east or west.
Okay. If you do that here, people get mad. Like, I'll tell people, like, go east on this road. And they're like, do I take a left or a right? I'm like, well, it depends which way you're going. If you're coming from the north, you want to, and like that kind of thing. So I feel like Southern people, that, and then I've been told this is Southern, and I'm not sure that that's true, but the idea of measuring things on like, oh, that's 10 minutes away instead of saying like this many miles. And I've had a bunch of people be like, no, that's a Southern thing. I'm like, I don't think that's just the South, but I don't know. So yeah, I wanted to gauge, like, do you do by distance or by time?
I personally do by time, but
Same.
like
Okay.
I am not from the Midwest, so it's I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it's like, because I'm also, because I said, I grew up here. I've lived in Alabama my whole life, but no one else in my family grew up here. So it's like, I grew up like full life here. They moved here like teenagey. But yeah, so I have the same thing where I'm like, I'm not from here enough to be able to say. Same with Montesano. So I say Montesano.
Okay.
It's Mountain of Health. And if you look up like Google Translate Spanish, it says Montesano. I grew up calling it Montesano. Everyone I knew called it Montesano. I called it Montesano on the internet once, and people came at me for not having a Southern accent and saying Montesano. And I'm like, that's like, say it how you want, but don't get mad at me for not having, because I was like, do you know how rude that would be if like mid-conversation I switched to a Southern accent for like 2 words and then went back? Like, it'd sound like I'm mocking you, and I'm not. It's like, I don't want to mock you. But
that's funny.
That guy that made up myths that got the cow thing wrong also made up this whole story about like, oh, this lady was saying, Monty, say no to his other lover. And made up this whole stupid story. And that has become like, that kind of perpetuated it too. And I was like, the same guy made up all of these. But so it's Sano. So the way you said it, yeah, that's correct in my mind.
Or it's at least good enough.
It's like, it's correct to my brain and correct to when they named it, they were going for Mountain of Health. So like it's
so okay, when it comes to like South Dakota history, I found that W.S. Wells was kind of crucial in campaigning for Pierre to be our state capital. And so not only was he like really for it, he was willing to put money on it, and his company spent like $10,000 advertising in newspapers, which I mean, it's a lot of money now, but it's a lot of money back then. And and I mean, especially because at the time, I mean, Pierre was just, an old fur trading post, and it's just not, I mean, it's nice, but it's just, it's an interesting pick for the capital, but he wins. And so that's like a little piece of W.S. Wells in our history, but he doesn't honestly spend a ton of time here, and he's actually buried in Huntsville along with his family. So it seems like he made investments down there, but then he made a life down there. So I think that's kind of interesting.
And we still have one of the other 5 Points roads is named after Wells. They went in. So the brilliant thing these guys did, the thing that to me made them seem like out of towners, they didn't have the grid line up with the downtown, but they also, the streets were numbered. Like they were like this first street, second street, etc. All of the mill villages did that. So at one point we had like 3 different first streets, and they were like, oh, which 6th Avenue do you mean? There are multiple.
You're killing me.
And so they had, in the 50s, 1950s, they had to rename a bunch of the streets. And so the investors got named on some of those. I believe Pratt may have been still alive when they named Pratt Avenue after him. But Wells has a street. Shag Nasty has a street. Like, actually, I don't know. I'm having to look up on the map. I've never noticed a Pettigrew street. So I don't know if he actually got one.
I would be fascinated by that because that's what's interesting in Sioux Falls is he has a school now. There's a Pettigrew Elementary, but until then, he didn't really have a ton of things named after him. I mean, except for the things
Yeah.
that he himself left for the city.
I was like, yeah, you said his pedestal statue
Uh-huh.
too. I love
Yeah.
that. We
Yeah.
yeah, we don't have a Pettigrew in, at least not that Google Maps is aware of. So he, I guess, got skipped.
But he gets skipped here too, and I think that's interesting. And maybe it's how it's supposed to be. I don't know.
I was like, yeah, he was vaguely unhinged. Like everything I've heard you say, and I
Yep.
did look at his Wikipedia at one point. I was like, there's a lot happening there.
There is a lot
Oh,
happening. Through the lens of Sioux Falls history, there's a lot of legend and lore with R.F. Pettigrew. And one of the things about him was he was always trying to make Sioux Falls happen. And so, he's quintessential in getting the railroads here, which is super important, but he's also quintessential in some failures, which I think probably every businessman is going to have that. But he, like, leaning into the whole, like, lore of him would be the fact that he wanted to build a big mill here, a flour mill. And so he invites an investor from New York, and that investor, George Seeney, when he comes in on the railroad, again, this is a legend. We don't know if it's true, but Pettigrew has dammed up part of the Big Sioux River. So when George Seeney gets to the site of the proposed mill, they undam the river and it's just gushing and flowing. And it's like, what a perfect site for a mill. And so they build this ginormous mill. But of course, the river really isn't like that. And it can't actually operate to the capacity that they need it to for it to be profitable. It have like sealed his own fate on that, which I think is interesting.
love a good con artist. Love a good historical con artist. And we had the opposite issue here, and I've not found a whole lot. Same thing, like writing wise. Like I know that we had a flooding issue, but Pratt brought investors in saying, hey, you need to put a cotton mill here. And we had heavy rains, and the whole place he wanted to show them was like underwater. And he was like, no, just come back in a week. I promise this has never happened before. And
Funny.
they did, and they went through, like they trusted him, and it worked out. But we do like the 100-year flood thing happened like that week he was showing them.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think it's only happened once or twice since then. So that was 1890s. So somebody was saying recently, like, the like old timers having their little prophecies. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. They're like, oh, we're due for another flood.
It's
like,
true.
What
Yeah.
does that mean? That is so ominous. But he just happened to have it. So it was like the opposite of that, where we had too much water.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Pettigrew has a couple other things. One thing that always sticks out to me is so he went down to, I think it's in Arizona, where the petrified forest is, which is now a national park. But at the time it wasn't. And he harvested a ton of petrified wood. And I mean, probably literal. I mean, I think it was way more than that. He harvested a bunch of it and brings it back here. We were able to polish it, utilizing the river that would power Drake Polishing Works, which then would polish this petrified wood, and we became one of the only places in the United States doing it for a variety of reasons. But I always think it's interesting because I think he would have kept doing that until there was no petrified wood left. It would have been a Lorax situation for sure. But luckily, thank goodness, it became a national park and you cannot do that. It is illegal now. But we have some interesting petrified wood in Sioux Falls because of that. He has a cemetery in town called Woodlawn Cemetery that he was a part of building, and that has this beautiful petrified wood sign, and then part of his home has some petrified wood in it as well. So it is interesting to be able to see real polished petrified wood up close, but also it just, again, like, I don't know what I think about him. I just don't know. Like,
We have some of those too, which I mentioned the guy with the weird house, but the Barrett, but yeah, like the guy that started our news, the Huntsville was Daily Times, now it's just Huntsville Times, that they just stopped printing like 2 or 3 years ago. But he started in 1910, and he was like, oh yeah, we gotta build up the town, like hustle in Huntsville, here we go.
mm-hmm.
he also he was in court a few times. Like, bro loved committing fraud. Like, he was all about committing fraud. He also, at least one or two things I've read, he would just walk in front of the streetcar slowly, just like to make people look at him. Which,
I'm
like,
gonna start doing that. Just be
it's like, I
look
get
at
it.
me.
Yeah, it's like the people that like go out in the crosswalk to do their Instagram photos and like hold up traffic. Like, he was doing that before it was cool. And that's what I think of with him. So we had our guy. He also, he was very in favor of prohibition and very in favor of like Huntsville being just this like, you know, huge city, but also like he was very in favor of segregation. Like, we don't like him from a like moral standpoint, but I'm like, I respect blocking the trolley because you like your outfit. Like, as a singular thing, I was like, I respected that and only that. Bro was really into fraud. So yeah, we had one of those too.
Oh my gosh. It's just interesting. And also people are complex, right? Like, and you just don't really know some of the intentions behind things. And Pettigrew and his brother were amateur archaeologists, which makes me like, it's not good. It's not good. And
I have a friend who's an
it's just
archaeologist
tricky.
too. Yeah, he has words about amateur archaeologists.
Yeah.
That just take things.
Yeah. It's grave robbing in a lot of ways. But, you know, it's hard too because I can see that there's more to it than just that, because we have a lot of Native American burial mounds in our area, and a lot of them didn't survive because they got plowed over when people were homesteading and things like that. So it's like, so maybe we would have lost them either way. I don't know. It just feels wrong that him and his brother did it.
It's like somebody was going to do it, and it's this guy that's also known for a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally nobody would have, but we have that as well here, where it's like we have the protected mounds that are now like historical sites and NAGPRA, and they have all the rules about specifically Indigenous burial sites. But there's also a lot of stuff where people are just like, oh, I found this, you know, on my property in this field and I'm just going to keep it. And like, yeah, that's not legal.
No.
Or we have the Tennessee Valley Authority. Yeah, I was like, that's not okay. Tennessee Valley Authority, they may or may not have done some things when they were doing all of the dams and like flooding towns and whatnot. Like, who knows what's in some of those lakes. Yeah. So there used to be towns under there and some cemeteries, but they now have a program like they're modern TVA. We call them there's good modern TVA and then like bad old TVA.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Modern good TVA has a program where they're like trying to help people like catch looters and like stop people from doing all of that amateur archaeology now. So it's like, yeah, we have programs now, but a lot of it's like too late for some of the things.
Yeah.
So
totally. Yeah, you can't undo it.
Right. And some of them, like, they're going through collections at museums now trying to find stuff that like slipped through the cracks, sort of, where they're like, oh, we didn't realize that's what you had like in that back room in that filing cabinet. Like, there's that kind of stuff. But same thing, it's like, what, you can't track everything down now. But ours, it mostly wasn't like famous dudes like Pettigrew. So we admittedly don't have like that guy to point at the way you guys do. We're just like vaguely like these people that we don't know who they were. We're essentially grave robbing. Whereas it's like, oh yeah, this, you know, elected representative.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's interesting too, because like there's a museum out at Blood Run, which is now called Good Earth. And the museum has a lot of the artist renderings from him and his brothers, like notebooks and things like that. It's just, again, it's complicated. It's just a complicated piece of it, of who he was as a person. And then the fact that him and his brother would display some of these objects in their homes. And so there's just a lot of it where I don't know this guy. Like, that's what always keeps happening whenever I talk about Pettigrew. But I'm open to, you know, hearing more. And who knows, maybe I'll fall in love with him one day. But today ain't the day.
He needs a redemption arc. Of some sort. I say a lot of our people like that. I'm like, if you pick out the one story about them that's really cool, but then like you hear the rest of it, you look into it more and you're like, oh no, you were terrible. Like, you just got to read just far enough back and you're just like, oh, there it is.
Yep, it's there. It's always
There's
there.
a lot of those, which are historical markers. The ones put up because they like here, enslavement, segregation was a lot more of a thing because I'm in Alabama.
Yes.
And that is reflected in some of the historical markers. So you'll see them, especially the ones put up in like the 50s. And it'll be like, wow, that guy sounds great. Let me read literally anything else about him.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's never mind. So we have a lot of those. I don't know if is that as much of an issue up there, the time period.
So we have a lot of I think something I've been thinking about lately is history isn't about remembering the good things that happened. History is remembering what happened. And there is specifically one historical marker that I've been kind of holding my breath about. I know I need to talk about it at some point, but it's called Incident at Fort Sod. And the way the story is told and what happened are just two different things. And I feel like when you're doing a historical marker, it would be so cool if you could just tell us what happened. And, there can be flavor to it. That's fine. When it's really just representing one side of the story and telling part of the history, and that's when I get frustrated, because it's kind of like the historical marker that somebody wanted to put up about a plantation. And,
Right.
it's like, oh, because my family owned that. And, we talked about this earlier, and it's like, okay, but are you going to tell the whole story? And it's like, well, no, I just want to talk about the part with my family. It's like, okay, well, so no, let's tell the whole story. Let's tell all of it. That's what makes it a good historical marker. And that's what makes it great for, you'd hate to have somebody visiting only get part of that story, and there's going to be people that aren't into history or don't know about the different things that were happening. And again, you don't want them to miss that either. So I don't know.
That's a common issue where people are like, oh, I think this thing is really cool that my family did here. I would like a marker. Even if it's something innocent like that, where it's like, you don't want to tell somebody like, hey, your family's thing isn't as important as you think it is. But I know that's come up before too, where it's like, yeah, I get that was cool, but the impact didn't really. So you have that issue. Plus, like I said, some people that are like, oh, I want to memorialize, my great-great-grandfather was in the Confederacy. It's like, that in itself, that did happen. And there's a Confederate section of the cemetery here, our Maple Hill, the big cemetery here, and they've got a marker saying hey, this is here, this is why. But yeah, you don't want to spin it a positive, and that's the difference. Is it's having a historical marker saying this thing happened here, as opposed to this thing happened here isn't that great. And that I think we've got a lot of markers, modern ones, they've been doing a lot better, obviously, than because there's more of an approval process, more awareness. But a lot of the 50s markers in particular, one of them downtown on the square that's about it's the marker for the county, and it says something the civilized tribes. I was like, that's not, we need to redo that one. We need to redo that one yesterday. So we've got a lot of those where it's the product of its time, and then also glorifying the wrong things. So yeah, we have issues with that as well, which our Confederate monument, they did move to the cemetery. That was the city's just workaround with it, where they were taking it down because people were like, oh, it's from, I think it was 1905, and we're like, cool, but we don't need that on the square, because then it makes people think, they said that we're happy about this,
right?
They put it in the cemetery, where it's the context of this is a marker representing the people who are buried 2 feet away.
Which makes sense. I mean,
and it has the context. And then there's a sign as well explaining this was put up by so-and-so. It was moved here in this year because of it. And it's they did a little bit better with context than they did in 1905. When they put it up in 1905, that was a whole other story.
Yeah. And also though, I mean, I'm just trying to think, it's we don't need to get into it, but it's 1905 is different than the ones that went up in the 50s and 60s. And, because those felt like they had more of an agenda than,
the 1905. So here in Huntsville, Alabama got a new constitution in 1901. Fun fact about Alabama, we had the longest constitution in the world, because every time they wanted to change a law, we just got an amendment. We had 900 something amendments. Others canceling each other out and everything, because they would just be like, oh, we'll just vote on another one. Which we'd go to vote. It felt so absurd. There were always just all these amendments, and some were like, this amendment only applies to these 2 counties. So those 2 counties but the state has to vote on it. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, bro, I've never even been to this place. One of them was taxing on goat farms. I'm not making this up. And I'm like, I've never been to this place. I've never seen a goat farm in this place. Like, I don't, but when they had that in 1901, that was the one that kind of codified the Jim Crow stuff. The 1905 one, it kind of did. Yeah, because I had the same thing too.
Got
I was like,
you.
1905, what's the tie-in? Oh,
Got it.
It's
that. Yeah,
it's the Jim Crow thing.
I feel so, I mean, obviously something I learned in school, sure, but I feel so removed from it, having not spent a lot of time in the South, and that is such a piece of such a blind spot for me that it is great to highlight, because it's like that the second you said it, it's like, wow, yeah, I need to understand that better. Wow, that's crazy.
And it's even growing up in North Alabama, hearing about like Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott, like
right,
that's our state capital. But I'd never been to Montgomery, so it still as a kid felt so far away. And it's like, now that's like a 3-hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've now been to the spots, I've been to the museums and everything, but like as a kid, you're like, oh, that's so far away. The same way that, like, you know, Kentucky is far away, or Maine is far away, and you don't realize, like, no, that's close, like how much that impacts. Because you're in, like, here it's 4th grade, you do Alabama history in 4th grade, so you're 10 going like, I don't know, but it's and then you realize, like, oh, the whole country, this is the thing that they learn about our state is
that is fascinating. So, that's really cool.
It's it's like, so there's those tie-ins too, where it's like, if you're from out of state, it's like that in Forrest Gump. People know Rosa Parks and Forrest Gump, and that's like which I know you've mentioned before, like Dances with Wolves, that everybody's like, oh yeah, this is the movie that everyone knows. Or sometimes you'll get My Cousin Vinny. We sometimes have that one.
Oh my gosh, that's
so my hometown looked like My Cousin Vinny. So that's So it's vaguely that one is vaguely accurate.
That is funny.
The trains and everything. But yeah, sorry, I've sidetracked this so hard.
Oh my gosh,
I was like,
funny.
Just went off on a
that's
thing.
Cool.
But yeah, so
it's okay. I'm doing it too. It's all good. So back to R.F. Pettigrew, I have a quote here that says, R.F. Pettigrew made and lost fortunes, rose and fell in national politics, won the praises and criticism of his countrymen, and was sought by presidents for counsel and support. He was a visionary, far ahead of his time as a speculator, a trust buster, a war protester, a woman's suffragist, and ecologist. So, ending that quote, however, like, in my eyes, I feel like that quote might be true, but I feel like most of the things he did were for himself, which, I mean, we're all guilty of, but specifically Pettigrew, I think that's how guys like this got to be guys like this. I don't know if you've watched or are watching The Gilded Age.
Well, I haven't, but I know I know what you're talking about, the show.
It's good, but it's, there's a reason those guys get to be those guys. So during the Old Courthouse Museum here in Sioux Falls had an exhibit called The Bottle and the Ballot, and in that display they were talking about, women's right to vote. And they had a letter from R.F. Pettigrew that was specifically aimed to women and urging them to vote and explaining how important that was. And then as you read it, like, he's like, yes, get out there and vote for my business that has this thing that does that. It's like, oh, got it. Okay. Like, I memean, he wants it, but he wants it for him. Like, he could care less if he voted any other time. But today, vote for this.
It's like the self-serving vote because I need your vote specifically. No, we had, I guess the guy that had the newspaper, Pierce, that would walk in front of the trolleys, he was like that too. He was like, yeah, make Huntsville the most famous, amazing place, because like he ran the newspaper. So that was more people who had to depend on him for the news and like made him money and made him look good. So it was like, of course you'd say that.
Yeah. And I mean, I get it, but like, I don't know. There's something about it. Like, I guess I would just hope that, like, if I were in that same position, like, I would do better than that. Like, I guess I would want to, like, help people, like, as opposed to, like, help people to make sure, like, I get what I want.
And here in Huntsville, the women's vote, we had actually, like, Carrie Chapman Catt and Susan B. Anthony like visited here in I think it was 1895. Like we had like kind of the wave of suffragists, but they didn't make this argument, but the people that invited them, who I think are also mentioned in that Changing Huntsville book that you found earlier, which because I've read through that a few times because it was actually the lady that wrote that is descended from some of the early suffragists here in town.
Oh,
But
cool.
their argument was give women the vote so that white women can cancel out Black people's votes. Like that was a big part of their rallying cry for it. So it's
Wow.
it's the South. It always comes back to that.
Yeah.
But that was a thing where they were like, yeah, we should be allowed to vote, but like specifically because we want to cancel out like people voting in favor of like civil rights.
Oh,
So that's So they had different, like, it wasn't monetary, but that same thing of like, oh, we want to do this thing that sounds like progress, but for not the right reason.
for not the right 30s. Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. That is so much to take in. So, yeah.
I also found, so Pettigrew, I have my newspapers.com up, and
Yay!
I found sponsor us.
Yeah.
Sponsor us, please. From 1892, which is the same year the cow won the butter thing, but it talks about Pratt and Wells and everybody coming down here. But it mentions O'Shaughnessy and everybody, and they mention Pettigrew, and then they mention Millett, the South Dakota governor, also being somehow involved. And this is the first I've ever found his name. I just had it pulled up and I was like, oh,
interesting.
I don't even know if he has a South Dakota connection, but it was one of those like, oh, that guy. I've not really heard of him other than this context, because that's one of those like, why would I know the governors of South Dakota from the 1890s?
Right.
But it was like, oh, I didn't realize like how many people in South Dakota cared.
It's fascinating.
So we had.
You do wonder what initially connected them, like what made this like train to Huntsville happen. Like what's going on here?
Can make that the teaser for the follow-on for this. Like, this is the teaser. We're gonna figure out why. We figured out who and what, but like, why?
I mean, they wanted to make money. We know that. And then they did. So
yeah. But the rationale for why us, because I've seen like, theories on why, because we had like water, because Huntsville, like the city of Huntsville wanted this to happen and like wanted all these mills because they wanted more people, they wanted more money. And we had our spring with 24 million gallons a day of fresh water. Like that's on all of the advertisements. But they agreed to just pump water to the mills for them. Like, oh yeah, we'll build all the infrastructure for you. So that was kind of how they tried to tempt them. But in terms of what initially got even like Pratt interested in Huntsville over, Atlanta or, any, I mean, not Atlanta because that's a larger city, but any of the other like smaller, similarly sized towns, like why here? So that's the teaser for the next one. We're going to figure out more about that connection.
It's true. It would be really interesting to know their thought process or the guy that brought it up, like where it's just like, where we should go. Huntsville, Alabama.
Which, and it's like, even nowadays, if you tell people, like whenever I travel and I say I'm from Alabama, they ask where the accent is. And then every now and then they're like, oh, I know Huntsville. I've read about Space Camp. Like, okay, cool.
That's cute.
So, but it's like, back then it was like, what was the draw? Like, who did they know? So that's, that'll be the next one. If we do it, if the part 2 situation will be that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's very open-ended. You know what I mean? Because I feel like it's something that we could research and give we could be like, history detectives and give what we think happened, but we don't know.
I'm hoping someone out there in their memoirs, because I've not really dug into it that much. I looked at more like once they were here, like the mill villages and the child labor, like I looked at that kind of thing, but not why Huntsville, like the broader like before they got here thing.
Yeah.
So it's there might be someone out there that has just written it down that knows like exactly like, oh, his cousin lived here or something, easy like that. But I haven't found it yet. So they have the detective moment.
I find it fascinating that Wells, like, I'm going to hop over to his obituary quick. So he, let's see, born in 1839, dies in 1900. And in his obituary, it's like when he was a young man, he enlisted in the Federal Army and fought throughout the Civil War. After his return home, he lived for a time in Red Wing, Minnesota, moved from there to Pierce, South Dakota, where he engaged extensively in business until the removal to this city, would be Huntsville, of course. And he was loyal to his friends, charitable to the needy, kind to everyone and a devoted parent and husband. He leaves 2 sons and a daughter and a wife to mourn his death, which, I mean, that sounds really nice, honestly, for an obituary of a businessman. It sounds like it sounds kind of sweet, actually, especially in comparison to like R.F. Pettigrew's obituary that ran in 1926 in Sioux Falls. It is all about what he did in his life, and in this very Richard Franklin Pettigrew, former United States Senator, one of the outstanding citizens and statesmen of history and pioneering in the Northwest region, died at his home in Sioux Falls. It's very, I don't know, kind of stuffy. And I know that's probably just who wrote it, but I also feel like it's probably how Pettigrew wanted it. And so Wells, I guess, comes off to me as a human being. So I like that about him. He seems like a guy. I don't know. He came to Huntsville, it says in 1892, where he had organized and was president of the Northwestern Land Association, which we talk about, which bought the lands of the North Alabama Improvement Company, and he invested largely in real estate and identified himself at once with the material interests of the city. And so, I don't know, it sounds like that he was thought of pretty well in his time, and definitely, I mean, I feel like they're, of course, tooting his horn, but I don't feel like too loudly or anything.
Okay, and I'm trying to find, so the one you have, that's from the Weekly Democrat newspaper. Nice. The Journal has one as well. So the Journal was the more Republican, this is back before like the party switch. So Republican as in, so the Journal was actually run by and for Black citizens, and it was the more progressive one, whereas the Democrat, that was run by the lady that was very like, we need, because it was run by a lady, but she was like, we need white women to vote. That was the lady that ran that newspaper. And so I'm curious.
So I definitely need to hear the other obituary now.
Oh, the other one, it literally under local and personal, Mr. Henry Bolden is sick. Take your watch to H.T. Daniel. Mr. W.S. Wells died here Wednesday. Miss Lula Mosley was in the city last week. Like, he got a bullet point. That is all that man got. So I feel like that either two options. His family didn't want to spend money to print the obituary in the Black Run paper, or he like they just were like, that it's that guy. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't care, it's that guy. Which
that would be valid. A win. That would be like, where it's just like, not be on their good or bad list. So that sounds good to me. Like,
they're just like, it's that guy. Over in Athens, which is like one county, or there's a city one county over, not Athens, like the real one, Athens, Alabama. They called us the Spring City sometimes before we were the Rocket City, because we loved our little water thing. Mm-hmm. But they just said that the death was, we lost one of its most valuable progressive adopted citizens. He'd done much for the upbuilding of the Spring City and was recognized as a leading factor, blah, blah, blah. That was the Athens Democrat. So same thing. I feel like there's a political side to who did and didn't leave him a nice review.
Yeah, a nice review.
This is how I'm going to think of obituaries now.
It's true. How many stars are you going to get?
Yeah, 3 stars.
Yeah. So it's so funny you've mentioned the springs a couple times, because Sioux Falls also has a spring. Yeah. So it's just, there's all these cute little, again, these bridges, these connections, these crossing railroad tracks, these just things that are just so interesting to see how pieces of our history do connect, and definitely interesting to have more to talk about. Like, I mean, I feel like there are plenty of spider webs and little veins to kind of explore there. Do you have, so like in your community, the 5 Points, that's where these guys kind of set up camp. That's where they do a ton of their investing. Is there anything that you've come across with your history research or anything that pops out as something that we should know about what they were doing in Alabama?
Lots of, they brought their own money, but I thought it was interesting. They did a lot of like, especially Pratt was like, yeah, I'll put my money where my mouth is. But he was mostly like, you should put your money where my mouth is. Like a lot of it was getting outside investors. New England, like he went up to the like a lot of the mills because they were shipping the cotton up there. So a lot of it was like him convincing people to give him money. And I found the hotel on top of Montesano. It was a health resort, and they had some of the same guys had their hand in that. And then you mentioned the Huntsville Hotel briefly. That I believe that one was also, if it wasn't started by, it was at least owned by that same group of people because they wanted tourism because you get more people and more money coming through. And then when you have people coming into town to invest, they have a nice place to stay. And they kind of like, they weren't just trying to get the money. They were very much like, all right, we want to make this a nice place. Like once you get here, like the trolleys and like the mill villages. I mean, nice is a relative, with the mill villages, but like they wanted to build housing. They wanted to get some kind of transportation infrastructure. Like they were trying to get not just the mills, but like the whole package.
Yeah.
And I've seen our library has some of them still, like the bonds where you could buy like a share of their company to help invest towards it. And so it's kind of interesting seeing like everybody, because that way you felt like you owned it a little bit. Like it had that marketing scheme too.
Yeah, like a penny stock or yeah.
They were like, oh yeah, no, you put like $1 towards this or like whatever small amount, like you're part of it. Thanks for helping us. Like there is a lot of that as well. And nowadays it's just houses in 5 Points. The intersection itself is a gas station and a chicken restaurant. And then one side's got a little tiny park. One side's a Regions Bank. One's a Hardee's, which I don't know. Do you guys have Carl Jr.'s or is it Hardee's?
We have had both. I believe currently, I think it's Carl's now, but we used to have Hardee's. Yeah.
We've got it's a Hardee's there, and then like the local owned grocery store, which is called Star Market. Star is in like the 5 Points.
Cute.
Yeah, there's always, and that store's been there like 80 years now, so it's been there a sec. But
I love
the houses.
Theme.
So many of the houses have little star motifs on their porch, like a hanging decoration, and we have the historic districts have little signs that say who built the house in what year, and it'll have a like Twickenham is the antebellum one, and then Old Town is a lot of the like more Victorian-y, like later Victorian Queen Anne type ones. 5 Points, their sign has a little star on it, and it's a lot of like 20s
cute.
Bungalows. I used to live in one of those 20s bungalows, and you could tell it was 100 years old, but it's fine. I loved it. But, so there are a lot of them are still standing. And it's kind of protected now. If you want to change the exterior of the house, like the city has to approve it if you're changing a color or a window or anything. So they've put a lot into keeping those preserved. So it's still there.
Was it like that when you lived there?
Yes, it was. Yeah. So the interior is like fair game. You can, if you can't tell from the outside, if you want to just gut it and make it one big open concept, like people could do that sometimes. Which I have thoughts. I'm like, why did you buy a historic house if you don't want it to be historic looking? But the exteriors you can't change without city permission. So it's like if we wanted to like change the color on a front door, there's a monthly city meeting that you have to turn in the paperwork and go and just say, hey, I want to do this color. And if it's not outrageous, they're just like, okay, cool. Thanks for asking. And that started in 5 Points. I think they started about 25 years ago doing that because it's kind of been different neighborhoods, different times. But those ones have been protected about 25 years.
And is this the neighborhood where you'd have like a lot of looky-loos, like people coming by and taking pictures?
I had like a kind of like a bay window, and that was people on the sidewalks. When I moved in, like people warned me in the neighborhood, like, oh yeah, because the houses are cute, little bungalows. Like people will just stop and take photos of the houses. Like don't be weirded out by it. There was one time like I was sitting in the window like reading a book, and I look up and people are photographing the house, and I'm like, I can see I'm in the picture. Like get the house next door. Like my cats and I are in the front window. And they only once or twice did they come off the sidewalk like into the yard. And mine wasn't even one of the prettiest ones or anything. It was like every house, like they'd kind of stand and try to get like an angle photo, but it was like don't be in our yards. Like that's weird. So that does happen a lot. And then I feel creepy whenever I stay on the sidewalk, and I'm still just like I kind of look like no one's on their porch, right? Because I don't want to like capture somebody just like having their morning tea. But that's a thing. So
that's fascinating. Yeah, we have a couple historical markers that they're not in people's yards. They're and maybe I'm wrong here, but so like there's the front yard, and then there's a sidewalk, and then there's a little bit more yard, and then a curb.
Oh yeah,
and it's just like I don't know if that's is that their land or is that the city's? I don't know, but it's always tricky because it's like you try to just stay on the sidewalk, but it's like, I don't know it's just such a weird spot for a historical marker.
We have some of those where it's like the marker is between the curb and the sidewalk. There's like a little like foot or so of grass. We have some of those around town where it's like, I guess they have to weed eat around it. So like that's gotta be annoying. Like you can't just mow your yard. You have to go around the sign. But it's like, to take the photo, I'm like, you're just standing on the sidewalk. And it's like the thing is a foot away from you. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna just take a picture of this.
I know. Sorry.
Cool.
I heard I was talking to somebody that worked at the parks department once for, a period of time, and they said, we used to hate the historical markers. I'm like, oh no. And they're like, we hated anything you had to use the weed whacker on. It's like, that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, that's our, it's like with the cemeteries, the historic ones with the big monuments, and like you have to weed eat like around that and not just like you can't just mow over it like you could with like the flat ones. So it's like I get that with the markers too. It's like more work for them. And
yes, exactly.
I never, until we were talking about it, I never thought about that. Like the ones that are in front of houses, I'm like, oh, you got to go around that. Like it's in your way every week.
But the history is interesting. I'm glad that they're there.
Yeah.
So.
It's like I'm glad it's here, but so I did have a friend once. Good.
You go.
Okay. I had a friend once that he was like, historical markers are just propaganda. And it's like, I think about that a lot because I'm like, yeah, in a way, yes.
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
It's like there's propaganda in your yard and you have to mow around it.
I actually agree with them.
Yeah, no, it's like he wasn't wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like, especially, there are certain ones that I would just say they're 100% propaganda. So yeah, it's interesting. You hope going forward they can be more telling things that happen, but I mean, it's interesting. But that's also why it's cool to have podcasts like this too, where we can like kind of talk about it through a modern lens and like look at things and be like, oh, this is kind of like a founding father of Sioux Falls, R.F. Pettigrew, and people have him literally on a pedestal on this statue. But what's fascinating about that, there are 4 sides to that pedestal, and they talk about his life, and the backside is the fall from grace, and that is the backside, and it is by the bushes. And I find that to be poetic,
It's like they strategically placed either the shrubs or the monument, whichever came second. Like something was strategically put out
but
there.
It is strategic regardless.
Yeah, somebody thought about that one. I want to do an episode about the historical markers just in general. So that's that. I want to include that. Yeah, the placement.
Oh yeah, placement matters for sure. And I'll kind of wrap up here with one more thing about Pettigrew and a historical marker that makes me be like, I don't know. So did you ever see the movie Poltergeist?
I haven't, but I have a guess as to what's about to be referenced.
So when after Fort Dakota leaves town, which, Fort Dakota was just built here in Sioux Falls it was built in response to the Dakota War of 1862. And it was built in response to the fact that, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it, to the fact that there was a Dakota uprising. It was called that as well, where Native Americans, I guess.
I mean, they were there first, so.
Right. It's just tricky because they were already being housed. They had already agreed to a bunch of things that they didn't want to do and were already forced onto reservations and things like that. But then they were also being starved. And so this kind of death rattle happens where they decide, this band, this group, this sect just decides, we're not gonna go quietly into that good night. Dude, like, you can't do this to us. And, well, honestly, so you can't do this to my children. And so they fight back, and that band comes through our area, and they kill 2 people, and that is taken as like this, like this out of nowhere wild act of aggression, which I always think is fascinating because it isn't any of those things, but that's how it's like perceived. And so the whole town is like evacuated, and they're like, we need a fort to, make sure that, it's safe. And so then the fort gets built and like nothing happens for 4 years.
Yeah.
Because there was never anything Well, anyway, so it's just one of those. And so during the time that the fort's here, 4 people do die, but they all die because the prairie is wild, not the people. And so they die of things like, Oregon Trail things. They
Yeah,
die of,
dysentery.
yes, exactly, tuberculosis
Yeah.
and drowning. And one of them died in a blizzard. And so it's awful that they're dead. And they were all very young men, which is terrible. But they die and they are buried up on this beautiful hill that overlooks what will eventually become Sioux Falls. And then as Fort Dakota packs up, it becomes the city cemetery for a brief shining moment until R.F. Pettigrew and the other rich people are like, you know what, it'd be cool if we built some houses up here. So that's when they decide, we got to move these bodies or the headstones or something so I can build this house. So, but Pettigrew doesn't do things for free. And so he, he does this song and dance to get money to move the bodies. And he says that he's going to bury them in his cemetery, Woodlawn and stuff. But like it just never happens. And so they end up getting buried in Mount Pleasant Cemetery, which is my favorite historic cemetery in the area. And like it was one of those that it was only like a couple decades ago that they located the bodies and stuff and knew for sure that they had been moved. So they still haven't found William Amidon and his son, the people that were killed during the Dakota Uprising or Dakota War. They haven't found their bodies though, so I don't know if those ones were ever moved. So those ones might still be there. But that is a historical marker that is in our cathedral district that talks about a little bit about that, which I think is interesting. And Pettigrew, I don't know. I heard a story. I don't know. I'll have to ask. I'm going to be talking to somebody from the museum soon about Pettigrew, so I will ask him. But I heard that Pettigrew, he built himself a cemetery, sure, but he built himself a huge monument, of course, for his burial. And he also built one for his brother. Well, his brother wasn't buried here, and his brother's wife did not want him to be buried here. And so Pettigrew went and got that body and buried him here.
Grave robbed his brother,
Yes.
essentially. Was the wife still alive when that happened? Like, did she know this happened or did she die first?
So that's a great question. I feel like I need to flesh out this story more with the Siouxland Heritage Museums. But the story I was told at the Mooney County Historical Society, it was like at their museum. So, I'm not 100% sure, but it sounded interesting regardless. But from what I heard, the wife was still alive, but I don't know.
Because like nowadays, like that'd be a lawsuit. But back then it's like, oh, well, what do you do?
Yeah, it's messed up. It's messed up.
Ours is, so I mentioned TVA and how they like flooded the cities to make the lakes for the dams. But we also had downtown, our hospital expanded and the which was its own thing. But that was one of the Black cemeteries. And they moved the bodies to a different historically Black cemetery. Because again, this is the South. Our big city cemetery was segregated for the most part, until the mid-60s. But they moved the bodies, most of them, we hope, supposedly.
Yep.
But a lot of them, early 1800s, unmarked graves. Like they knew, oh, this area was the burial ground. But I've yet to find anyone that is like, oh yeah, no, we absolutely. Because it was 1970s. Like we didn't even have the technology a lot of the technology wasn't as good or available. Like it may have been out there, but like availability, etc. So I don't know that they did move all of them. So we have a similar, but it's like there were no records to even say who was there to know, like, oh, yep, we have found X number of people. That is everyone. Like, we don't even have that documentation. So,
oh my gosh,
it's very up in the air in terms of like who's who are we still looking for, etc. And they're currently renovating that part of it. Was a parking deck, all of this for a parking deck. And they're currently renovating it. And I'm like hopeful that they are being a little careful this time, now that we like, know better, do better type thing.
One would hope.
So I presume, I presume nowadays, like it's a lot better. But when they initially did the moving and renovating, it's a similar thing of like, we don't know where. We also don't know where John Hunt's body is for sure. The guy they named Huntsville after.
Really?
Don't know where that went. Solid guesses out there, but no like marked thing. There's no marker.
Fascinating.
So yeah, we just got some mystery dead bodies. It's fine.
See, that's why I keep Corey right here. He's just right there.
Oh, okay. I was like, yeah. So you know, yeah.
Just gonna keep him with me.
I appreciate the dark humor.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, no, that's the thing.
My nephew, when he was here recently, I mean, he's a kid. He's like 8 or whatever. And he was just like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, that's Corey. And he's like, that's weird. And I go, to be fair, until Corey died, I kind of agree with you. But now it's comforting. Yeah. So I don't know what to tell you, kid.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, I really appreciate diving into a little bit of our connection with Huntsville to Sioux Falls and Sioux Falls to Huntsville, and just being able to finally focus on the pieces that cross over. And then, of course, our differences too, because when we're talking about slavery and segregation, I have so much to learn and understand, because really I only know about that from books. I haven't lived in a place where that was continues to be a part of the history and the future and just how it is. And so I think that was a real just moment, I think, for me tonight was hearing that.
The echoes of it. And I forget, because it's I forget oh yeah, other parts of the country, you don't have those same,
right.
They said echoes of it, it's not in the historical markers. You don't have 2 of everything.
Right.
2 schools for the same age group, 2 cemeteries, that sort of thing that you see. Even though obviously nowadays everything is integrated, it's still well, why does your town have 2 of all of these things? Well, because historically they separated everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, even though it's not happening now, you still see kind of the echoes of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's fascinating. And, of course, we have our own shameful, awful, terrible history when it comes to our treatment of Native Americans, and honestly, the continued treatment. So it's history's hard. And what's cool though is that we get to, make choices and live our lives in a way today that hopefully leaves some kind of stamp on it. And I feel like both of us are, contributing a little bit to that by doing podcasts where we kind of take our history, make it a topic to talk about. Let's just talk about it. Let's get into it. Let's make it fun. Let's make it interesting. Let's learn some stuff. Let's explore it. So I really appreciate that you're able to pop in for that.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on here. And so I would love to do a follow-up once we figure out more of why Pratt even showed up down here. I would love to do another one. This was
definitely 100%. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.